finally, someone from Lynchburg is going to start a local bank. Hey, man, what's up? I said, hey there, how you doing? He said, man, you're a pun. You're a pun. We're here for the citizens of our communities that we serve and for the communities, what we can do to help make them stronger. That's something that we take very seriously. We look at them as our brethren, but we also look at them as our competition, which we love to crush, our competition. If they had just made two of the big banks take it and not the rest, then people have known, well, they're the ones in trouble.
Right.
I do believe that the tariffs that have been enacted, we have not necessarily seen those numbers yet. I do feel like it comes a time where new leadership is good for a company. You went to VMI. He's like, you're dumb. You know, it's like a reform school. They understand that you know we're here, we're solid, we're not going anywhere, and they know Bank of the James.
Welcome to another edition of No Holds Barred. I'm Rich Roth. My guest today, the CEO and one of the founders of the Bank of the James, Bob Chapman. Hi, Bob.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, appreciate you coming by. I'm going to dive right in because I love the story of how the Bank of the James started. I was talking to Todd a little bit last night.
Right.
And then spoke with some other folks at the bank, Jimmy Davis and Lisa Taylor, and they're like, you got to have them tell this story. And it's such a great story.
Yeah.
And these things really do happen.
Yeah, they do. They do happen. And it's probably gotten a little more trumped up through the years than what it really was originally. But no, so I came to Lynchburg in 95. I was with a larger bank. It was Crestar Bank at the time, and it's morphed into other banks. With them almost 15 years and was over in the Shenandoah Valley in Lexington and got transferred here. And then about 1998, so I've been here a little over right at 3 years. All of a sudden, Central Fidelity Bank, which had its headquarters for the Western region here, was bought by Wachovia. There was a First Federal Savings Bank, which was a local bank, and Co-op Savings. So they were local banks headquartered in Lynchburg up until that year. And it seemed like that year they all it was one of those waves of consolidations, and they got caught up in it. And so Lynchburg historically has been somewhat of a banking center for this part of the state. There's a lot of money here, so the ground's very fertile for banking. And historically, Lynchburg has had banks headquartered here, and that's kind of been part of the banking heritage. And all of a sudden in 98, it was no really banks headquartered in Lynchburg at the time. We had some community banks headquartered outside of Lynchburg, but in terms of headquartered in Lynchburg. So I was working at the bank, and Todd Scruggs, whom you mentioned, we became co-organizers of what was then known as Bank of the James in organization. That was the regulatory name of the bank. But we were kind of talking a little bit about the fact that, yeah, it seems like there's an emerging opportunity here, because I would be going to Christmas parties or supper clubs or what have you, social events, and I kept hearing, we need a local bank. We need a local bank. And I thought for sure someone that had been here much longer than myself would have come along and done it. So anyway, so Todd and I, he lived beside the Cavalier store on Rivermont Avenue. And so we used to meet up there after work at the Cavalier and talk about possibly the concept of a local bank in Lynchburg. And so he had a professor at UVA when he was in the Commerce School that we went to talk to, and it was interesting when we went to talk to Larry Pettit was his name. He's unfortunately deceased now, but we had done some demographics and some analysis on bank deposits and trying to sort of show him a case could be made for such an effort. And the first comment out of his mouth was, "Well, finally, someone from Lynchburg is going to start a local bank." Then the second was a question, and he said, "What are you going to call it?" And we had no idea. We hadn't even thought about that. But what was interesting about that question is beyond the demographics, beyond perhaps some of the banking data, it really impressed upon me the notion that names are important. You know, it sort of projects your philosophy or maybe a little bit about who you are. So we didn't have an answer for him on that, and so we decided that if he confirmed our idea, then we were going to go and talk to some community leaders that we had gotten some information through the grapevine, so to speak, that were perhaps interested in a new local bank for Lynchburg, and so we talked to several of our founding board members, Ken White, Ron Dolan, Don Giles, Tom Pettigen, Carl Hutchison, Richard Zucchini, Ted Counts. Probably leaving somebody off. Hopefully they don't hear this maybe, but community leaders and what we learned in talking to them is that yes, they would be interested in joining the effort, but they kind of had two ground rules. Number one, they didn't want any surprises, you know.
For example,
well, like just someone coming up to them on the street and telling them something about maybe what Todd and I did personally or something we did wrongly business-wise.
Gotcha. Okay.
They wanted us to be straight up with them like they were straight up with us, and that's the way we like to roll. But the real overriding theme that these Donna Clark was another one. Donna Shule Clark was another founding director. Miss her sorely. Anyway, the premise of our founding was that we wanted to be a bank headquartered in Lynchburg, Virginia for Region 2000, which at the time, that stood for the 2,000 square miles in Central Virginia, which was Lynchburg, Amherst, Bedford, Campbell, Appomattox, and Nelson even at the time was part of that. That we wanted to be a bank headquartered in Lynchburg to serve the Region 2000 market. And that in having such a financial institution in this part of the state, it would bring back financial clout. You know, when you have corporations headquartered in certain cities and markets, a lot of times those corporations will support those home markets with personnel, volunteer time, you know, people that work with the bank, money, et cetera. And so our board felt like that it was that important to have a bank headquartered in Lynchburg because that helped breed economic well-being and quality of life for certainly the city of Lynchburg, but for the Lynchburg region, greater Lynchburg region. So that was really the premise by which we were founded, really to be a community bank for, of, and by the community and its citizens. And of course, we understood that we worked in the end for our shareholders and create value for them in their investment in the bank. So we organized the board. We began the arduous process of filing with we decided to be a state chartered bank and a member of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. So there were certain ways you could become a bank, and we decided to be a state bank and a member of the Fed. And then when we went to see the banking commissioner with Larry Pettit, Todd Scruggs and myself, we were heading to Richmond, and Pettit was like, "Look, we got to tell them we got some name. You know, we got to call ourselves something." We had gone through all kinds of names over the several months of kind of organizing and getting ourselves ready to go talk to the banking commissioner. So we went to Richmond. On the way to Richmond, we were literally riding across the James River, and Todd said, "How about James Valley Bank?" And Larry Pettit said, "Well, how about State Bank of the James?" And then we all kind of said, "Bank of the James." Yeah. So that's kind of how Bank of the James came to be. And I got a funny story I'll tell you later about in our organizational office about a phone call I got. So when we went to Richmond, we told them that was our name. Well, the commissioner looked at Scruggs and me. I was 36 at the time, and Scruggs was 29 or something like that. Or I was 35 and he was 29. And the banking commissioner said, "You all need more gray hair or no hair." So anyway, we had to go find a CEO that was seasoned and that had more banking experience than we had. Even though I'd been with the bank 15 years, that wasn't enough banking management experience to start a bank as a CEO. So we hired a fine gentleman by the name of Jim Hughes. He had been a banking veteran in this part of the state with Central Fidelity Bank. He had run a bank in Bedford, Liberty Bank in Bedford. And so he was our CEO for the first 5 years. And so that really, he really was a linchpin to kind of getting ourselves off the ground and in good stead with the regulators. The community leaders that we put together on our board gave our effort credence. I mean, we were two young whippersnappers at the time, and if it weren't for some of the leaders that stepped up to the plate to be on our founding board, we wouldn't have had a chance of getting the effort going. So it was really a team effort from the start. And so we opened up an organizing office on Commerce Street, and that was where we started. We put ads in the paper with coupons if you were interested in buying stock, and so we were given we had to raise $8 million. That was the amount of money we had to raise from the get-go. So we set out to raising it, and we raised almost $9.5 million in almost 90 days.
Wow!
So we really got off on a great start. But the funny story, we had our phones, it was like dialing for dollars. Of course, we were going out and making personal calls, and I was going all over the state, with contacts I had, and certainly here locally, trying to raise the capital to start the bank. That's one thing I will say for small business entrepreneurs out there that want to get in small business. You can have the best idea business-wise in the world, all ball of wax. But what happens to a lot of small businesses? They run out of capital.
Right.
And so that if there's anything I would say, advice in anyone listening to this maybe that wants to start a new business, make sure you've got plenty of capital.
Yeah, and I'll kind of just jump in on that because, from our standpoint, we run into plenty of new businesses that are like, oh man, I don't have any money for advertising. And it's like, wow, you just started a business and you don't have any money to promote it. That needs to be built in, to your point.
No question.
You need money to start a business.
And you need to have reserves for surprises that are going to happen, because they're going to happen.
Right.
But in that organizational office, I got a phone call one day, and this guy on the other end said, "Hey man, what's up?" I said, "Hey there, how you doing?" He said, "Man, you're a pun. You're a pun."
A pun?
And I said, right. Thanks for calling. You're welcome, man. Good luck. So what he was saying is Bank of the James is a pun.
Okay.
We were a bank, and then you have Bank of the James, the Bank of the James River, the banks of the James River.
I getcha.
So anyway, that was just sort of a funny story. The guy, he was some hippie dude. It was so funny. But
who the hell are you, and what the hell are you talking about?
Right? Pun. And then it kind of dawned on me what he was talking about. So anyway, we raised the money. We went to file our filings, and I kid you not, the stack of paperwork for each entity, the state and the Fed, was about that much. And it took us, we left our bank in June of 98, and we opened the doors July of 99. So it took us a year, 13 months to organize. Todd and I quit our jobs. We had no money coming in at the time. So we were kind of, we were so young and naive, we really didn't know what we were getting into. And that was probably in our favor, because if we had been a little too more cautious or older with kids, we might not have been as willing to roll the dice.
Right.
But we got going. We got open. We opened the bank with 12 strong. We called ourselves the Dirty Dozen. And today we have 25 offices and about 162 employees. And we're, certainly in greater Lynchburg, sort of our backyard, so to speak. But we have locations in Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, Lexington, Botetourt, Buchanan, Nelly's Ford, Roanoke, Blacksburg, and Whitfield. The Blacksburg and Whitfield shops are mortgage offices.
Okay.
So we have a mortgage division that part of the bank. So it's been an interesting 26. I guess we're in our 27th year now, which is hard to believe.
Yeah.
But it's been just a real rewarding time and just the relationships both internally and externally with our customers. And one of the things I had kind of liked about being a banker, because you can certainly get into other avenues and frankly make more money. I mean, banking is not like an investment banker on Wall Street or some high-powered salesperson. But what I enjoyed about banking was being in a position to help other people succeed and meet their dreams of whatever it is, whether it's home ownership or buying their first car or starting a business or sending their kid to school, college. You know, it's always been thrilling for me to be able to be in a position to help that endeavor out and make a difference.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up in terms of, you know, banking and you know, and you know, what was important to you, because, you know, I think that's something that's, you know, and I even talk to my kids about that. It's important to make a lot of money, right? I mean, to at least be comfortable, but it's really important to like what you do because you're there so much. And, yeah, you know, it's funny. I mean, I used to be a financial advisor for a while. And my kid asked me not long ago, he goes, so if you still would have done that, we'd have a beach house and a lake house and all these different things. And, you know, and I'm laughing going, yeah, maybe. But you got to like what you do. It's so neat when you get to go to work and, you know, you get to help people or help businesses or whatever the case might be. That's important for, I think, younger people to know too, right? It's not all about the money.
Well, it's not. It certainly helps grease the skids,
right? Of course,
you know. But you know, we have a philosophy at our company. It's pretty simple, and it's nothing. It's no secret recipe. But we really, and I'm not sure which one is first. They're kind of both tie. But we want to take care of our customers. Mm-hmm. We take that very seriously. We take very seriously the trust they put into us to do their business and know that it will be kept confidential and all that. But equally as important, we want to take care of our employees. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I personally, and I know the leadership in our company takes very seriously, the fact that we all have a finite amount of time on this earth. And when you're working for a company, you spend a lot of that time on this earth working for that company away from your family, and that's a sacrifice. And so we want to make sure they understand why they're taking the time to do that and what our mission and vision and values are. And also that we care about them and their families, that when we bring someone on in our company or hire them, that's a big event for us because we're not only bringing them on to be a teammate and what that means, but we're also bringing their family on with us because the people that work with our company, I'm certain, you know, their family depends on the fact they have benefits and make a fair wage to give them financial stability and safety. And so that's just it's just been our philosophy from day one, that we want to take care of our folks and look, if our folks come in and I'm a big believer the cream rises to the top, so we're big on inner squad, so to speak, promotions. Mm-hmm. We like to promote people that come in and perform at an outstanding, excellent level, and so we really just take that very seriously. And then the third thing that we take very seriously is being a good corporate citizen, and I think we do a really good job on that front, you know, in the communities that we serve across the regions that we're in. And we feel like if we can succeed on those three fronts, the stock price will take care of itself. The stock price lately for banks has not been very, very exciting, but it's beginning to turn and come back around. And I think, you know, with social media today, and you know some of the bank scares we've had, 2008 certainly, and the pandemic, and then you know the Silicon Valley debacle. You know, people have I think, you know, through the years it's been very interesting that some of these crises that directly affect banking have been. The interesting thing for us is that through it all, the fact that we try to stay in good contact with our customers and treat them as we would want to be treated, that when those types of of situations arise, it's really good to know that our philosophy and how we operate with respect to our customers, that they knew that when Silicon Valley and Signature Bank failed, we're not them. We're nothing like them. So we never really had any people scared that their money wasn't any good in our bank, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, do me a favor and talk a little bit more about the banking industry. You mentioned '08 and obviously the failures of big banks and the government stepping in, and that had everyone nervous. And then the Silicon Valley just a couple of years ago. And then the other part of it that you talked about was customer service. And I feel that we're getting, as not necessarily as a community, but just in general, we're getting further and further away from really relating to and dealing with customers. And I think that's one of the things that, especially in Lynchburg, people want to deal with local companies. They want, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they want their hand held if something happens or comes up, and, not be sitting there, press 3, press 2, the whole deal.
Right.
They want someone to help them. And, talk a little bit about being a community bank in Lynchburg, Virginia. And obviously, as you pointed out, you're way beyond that. And that kind of points to the name Bank of the James, right? I mean, that resonates statewide. And I guess that wasn't initially your intention, but it worked out okay.
Well, we're very proud to be a community bank. We're a community bank, and that's our mantra. We're here for the citizens of our communities that we serve, and for the communities, what we can do to help make them stronger. That's something that we take very seriously as well.
What are some of the differences between a community bank, and a big bank, Bank of America, some of the the big ones that we all know?
Our banking system is very, very critical for the free enterprise system that we're fortunate enough to have in this country. And I would just say, generally speaking, most bankers are pretty patriotic types. Big bankers and small bankers, small community bankers. We really see ourselves as part of the capitalist system that helps promote the great country that we live in. And it's a system that we strive to uphold and adhere to the rules and regulations in, is part of what makes our country the greatest country, on earth. So I think that said, there are differences, between bigger banks and smaller banks. I think generally, and first off, let me say, we've got a lot of good community banks in and around this region and across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we look at them as our brethren, but we also look at them as our competition, which we love to crush, our competition. but I'm just kidding there, but not really.
Not really.
But no, in terms of being a community bank, typically community banks are on the smaller end of the scale. We're still nimble and adaptive enough to be. We can meet needs a little easier maybe than some of the bigger banks are a little more cumbersome in their systems perhaps and the way they operate. And I mean, there's some banks, bigger banks today that they don't even give equity lines any longer, stuff like that. So we try to have the products that can meet the needs of our small business owners and our individuals that we serve. I will tell you that with technology today, I mean, we compete in the commercial markets, and if I have to say, one of our fortes, and we've got a lot of fortes, but the forte that probably makes the most revenue for us is our commercial banking.
And that's kind of where you came from, right? I mean, were you in commercial?
I actually, when I started in the eastern region of Crestar Bank, and I'm originally from Suffolk, Virginia, and Tidewater, I went to teller school, and then I was in the management training program, and I ended up being a branch manager, and then I switched to commercial.
Okay.
So I did have commercial banking experience. The funny sidebar, the commercial banking team today, they don't let me lend any more money because they know way better than I how to do it. But we compete with the big boys. I mean, we've got the products that can compete, whether it's treasury sales, lending. The only sort of shortcoming that we have is that banks have legal lending limits based on your capital. And so in our case, our legal lending limit is $15 million. I mean, the big guys, they can lend big money.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can preclude us from dealing with a certain commercial business that wants to deal with us, but we don't have the financial clout to really be a good fit for them. And we tell them that up front. But if things change, there's some things we can do, but sometimes we have to pass on real big companies that we'd like to deal with just because of our capabilities. But we you mentioned it earlier. I mean, we really strive hard. I mean, the real distinguishing feature between banks, in my mind, is how well you serve your customer. And, you know, we thank them for their business. We try to get to know them, you know about their family. I mean, it's really part of trying to, you know, we talk about internally about our family of employees, and we really feel like our customers are part of that family. And we really, that's one of the things that we really strive hard to do with our customers, to make them feel at home and that they've got a partner that's ready to stand with them. Yeah,
and I would think, and actually I know that one of the other advantages of dealing with a local community bank is you know people in the community. And I don't even know if you remember this or not, but, you know, years ago, you know, I reached out to you. We went out to grab a couple drinks. I guess a lot of things happen at bars, right? A lot of businesses get started on cocktail napkins or whatever. Yeah. But, you know, I came to you to get more information about commercial banking, and you started talking about radio, and, you know, you were the one who kind of helped put this whole thing together with Mary and myself and our partners coming together to buy WLNI and turn James River Media into this, just over, you know, a conversation. And then knowing that you had the support of someone with the bank and the resources to help make it happen, that's an important part of it too. But it's those local relationships where you might be able to help someone because you understand and you know and you see the vision with them, whereas a bigger bank is just looking at the numbers only.
That's correct. And so, you know, when you have the local knowledge and you can do a little home cooking, that goes a long way. I'll tell you, the markets that we're in, a lot of the larger banking companies have virtually pulled out, you know, whether it be commercial bankers, branches. And so we're happy to live off their scraps, you know, and serve those communities. So we one other quick sidebar I'll mention, you know, the markets that we're in, they're economic engines in all of those markets, and that's higher education. Yeah. You know, we've got good economic engines in those markets, and one being higher education. Of course, Lynchburg is well diversified, always has been, with respect to the city leaders back years ago, did a fantastic job of attracting some of the businesses that are here today. I mean, at BWXT, Arriva, you know, you got a lot of small manufacturing companies. I think at one time we were known as the escalator capital of the world. Oh,
is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, with some of the businesses here that built those types of product. So Lynchburg has been a very well balanced across the board. We've got a great healthcare system here. Employs a lot of people. You know, Liberty. I was talking to someone the other day. You know, Liberty has just grown phenomenally, and I'm always cheering them on, and all the schools here. But I can remember, I was talking to someone just yesterday that I can remember 15 years ago, if I went to downtown Lynchburg on a Saturday morning, I could park right in front of the bank and there was no one downtown.
I remember the same thing, and I tell a story about driving downtown and the traffic lights weren't even on. They were just kind of blinking. Yep.
And you go down on a Saturday morning now, and you'd be lucky to find a parking place on Main Street. So it's great. I mean, real renaissance has been going on, and it's been really great to see. And I'll say that we, and I'm sure other community banks and banks, we've been part of helping. We've invested a lot, you know, in downtown Lynchburg and across the region here to help that growth.
You know, Bob, you mentioned 2008. Right. And there was the housing crisis, but it led to banks failing because of mortgage loans and all kinds of insanity. And, we were talking just a second ago about some of the latitude you might have as a community bank to be able to work with people who and even though the numbers may not add up, you may be able to see other things and really help them out. Has a lot of that changed? And I know it's got to be much tougher on you guys as a bank because of new regulations after everything that's been going on the last, decade or so. But how does that impact, local businesses or people in the community? And how have you worked to make it more, not acceptable, but how have you worked
user-friendly, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, to work with the folks locally.
It's a bit of a tap dance sometimes. With '08 happening, and I could probably talk the rest of the afternoon about all that. But the bottom line to '08, it was just greed. It was greed from the realtors. It was greed from the people buying the property. It thought they could flip it for a profit. It was greed with the mortgage bankers. It was greed with the Wall Street bankers, the rating houses, all up and down the line. It created this environment that really we were on the precipice of going over the edge. If decisions hadn't been made, particularly with the Treasury Department and the banks, and it could have been a real ugly situation.
But not for you guys, for the bigger banks, or just the country in general?
For the country in general,
okay.
Yeah. It was pretty serious what was going on. And I will say as a sidebar, you remember the Troubled Asset Relief Program, which is known as TARP.
TARP, yep.
I'll never forget. We were trying to decide, what in the world to do, because we thought the world was kind of coming to an end. We might need capital, so we applied for TARP, the government money, but we decided as a board not to take it, and we went out and raised it ourselves. And we got local investors that gave us that cushion that we may need to survive what was ahead.
Was that hard? Asking local people for money, knowing what was going on in the banking industry?
It wasn't easy, but again, the fact that a lot of our local investors
knew you guys,
knew us, and knew who was involved with the bank, and they stepped up to the plate, and so we were able to get it privately, so to speak, and not take the federal government money. Interestingly enough, our Madison Heights office, when it was reported in the newspaper we didn't take TARP, our deposits doubled.
Really?
Yeah, that we didn't take the federal money.
Yeah.
But that whole era and time with the TARP, and it's really a bit of a misnomer. You keep hearing, and it's still said sometimes today, about how the banks were bailed out. Banks were bailed out. Well, most all of that TARP money was paid back to Uncle Sam with interest.
Really?
And not only that, a lot of the bigger banks were forced to take it. See, one of the things that was really worrisome in that era was the public's trust in the banking system. If the banking system does not have the public trust, all bets are off. You got It's a Wonderful Life, right? They're lined out the door. They want their cash,
right? And, so you don't have it. Because it's not liquid, is what I meant to say.
Right. We got it, but maybe not as much as we need to give cash out, right? Because it's not always liquid, correct? So it was a real challenging time, and I think that sort of had painted the industry with a broad brush, and even the small community banks were kind of caught up in that. Greedy bankers, they've messed up again. They've selling mortgages to people that shouldn't get them, and so forth.
But you had mentioned not taking the TARP and the community banks, and maybe for some of the bigger banks that didn't need to take it but were forced to, that was, a negative for them, right? Because they were perceived as taking it when they might not have needed it. But the fact that you didn't, did that help? And I guess you answered the question when you said your deposits doubled, that people wanted to know that they were dealing with somebody that didn't need government assistance.
Yeah. Well, the getting back to the big banks, the reason they made all the banks take it is because if they had just made two of the big banks take it and not the rest, then people would have known, well, they're the ones in trouble.
Right.
So they wanted to make everyone sort of equally in trouble.
Right, yeah.
I guess.
Right.
But, honestly, that year in '08, our deposits soared. It was amazing. A lot of folks left, what was Wachovia at the time, that became Wells Fargo today.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it really counterintuitively really helped us a lot in terms of our growth, such that we had to talk to the regulators about our capital ratios. With our balance sheet growing, our capital was falling, and that was one of the reasons we had to go raise the money, because we had to keep the proper amount of capital by regulation to our total, our total footings, as it's called. So that was an interesting time frame, and of course, since then we've had the pandemic, we've had the Silicon Valley, and again, I think it just goes back to the basics of blocking and tackling with your customers, treating them with superior service, and at the end of the day, regardless of what happens nationwide, they understand that we're here, we're solid, we're not going anywhere, and they know Bank of the James.
Do you feel like a lot of that, because I mean, even leading up to '08 and that whole crisis, there was a lot of consolidations of banks and banks being taken over or merging, and and then obviously we saw a lot of that afterwards as well. And then the Silicon Valley. Are we kind of in a place now where you feel like banks are more stable and we're not going to see the name changes where Wachovia becomes Wells Fargo?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to keep up.
It is. I wish I could say yes, but I have to say, at least in Virginia, there are community banks out there that, well, let's just put it this way: the last 6 years with the pandemic and Silicon Valley, it's been a long 6 years for bankers. I mean, there's been a lot to contend with. There's some banks out there that have older management. We're one of the fortunate ones. We have a relatively young management team, relatively speaking. I'm like the oldest in the bank now, almost. With the big banks and the small banks, we're all trying to compete.
Yeah.
We're all trying to do the right thing by the system, and so we just continue to stick to our values, our core values, and that carries us through the day.
You guys have grown incredibly, right? I mean, you talked about, you started out with, here we are, and it's you and Todd, and you create this bank and you name it on the way to the meeting with the consultant. And now, and I forget how many locations, but Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, right, Roanoke. I mean, you guys are all over. Talk a little bit about Lynchburg and how Lynchburg relates to other areas. Let's just say economically right now. I mean, in terms of because one of the things that I feel like I've noticed in the time that I've been here, and I think I said this earlier, people in Lynchburg really care about dealing with local businesses.
Yeah.
I think more so than other places, even like Roanoke. I mean, I'm not even talking New York or whatever where they don't care, but people here really want to do business with local businesses, support local charities. That feels like it's more important to this area than others. And you obviously have locations all over the place.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It is.
Is it?
Lynchburg is definitely and this was another reason why starting a local bank was such it was a good idea, back when we were talking about it with the consultant, is that's very true. Lynchburg historically, is a very awesome place to live in Virginia. And I think, the not being a native Lynchburger, I can maybe say this about ourselves. Lynchburg is a great town, and have folks that are very proud of the city and the region of Lynchburg and what it has stood for years and what it continues to stand for. Just talking about the markets that we're in, Charlottesville is a market unto itself.
Okay,
it is a good market. We're honored and proud to be there, and love serving the citizenry of Charlottesville. But it's a totally different market than Lynchburg. Lynchburg is more akin to Harrisonburg, Lexington, and Roanoke. Roanoke's a little different. Roanoke was the headquarters of the old Dominion Bank. Well, it was called Dominion Bank, but it was the old bank called Dominion Bank, and that now is Wells Fargo. So in Roanoke, it's kind of a headquartered bank for Wells Fargo. So again, it's almost like it's not really a hometown bank, but it's a headquartered bank there. So that they give a lot of resources, in their kind of backyard. So that makes for a real competitive, tough market to be in. And kind of to your point earlier, I know Roanokeers, they like local banks, but I think that historically with Dominion Bank being headquartered there, and that's kind of morphed into what it is today, a lot of folks historically, because sometimes people changing banks is like people changing churches,
right?
And they just end up staying there. So Roanoke's a little tougher market to compete in, but we've got a great team there, and we've made some good strides, and we're continuing to block and tackle there, and try and serve the people that we're lucky enough to attract there. But Roanoke is it's bigger, and it's a little bit different. But I will say this, interestingly enough, you think about Lynchburg Bank or Lynchburg headquartered bank in those markets. In Harrisonburg, Virginia, we are the local bank there. Now, they have a community bank there, but in terms of what we've been able to establish in the team that we have, we're looked at as certainly one of the local banks.
Yeah, wow.
So the fact that we're headquartered in Lynchburg, it's not. We're still looked at as a local bank in those areas, and they're the markets we want to be in. We don't want to be in. People have asked, well, shoot, you should go to Richmond. You're right on the James River in Richmond, Bank of the James. That's hand in hand.
Right.
Richmond is so overbanked.
Is it?
Oh yeah. And I'm not to say that's not to say we couldn't maybe go down there and be successful, and we've got a lot of contacts down there, but that's a different market too, because again, there are banks that were headquartered there. The new Truist Bank in the day. Well, the bank I work for, Crestar Bank, that was headquartered in Richmond. So they've got a big headquarters building. So again, if you can find markets that are sort of off the beaten path, where we are a lot, that's where we like to be.
Following up on that, the economy of Lynchburg, talked a little bit about it being more insulated. Is that accurate? Where the highs, when things are booming, things are still really good here, but the highs aren't quite as high and the lows aren't quite as low. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Lynchburg is kind of a steady as you go market. I will say since 2020, the real estate market here has really jumped up in value, in the last 6 years, which if you go back 25 years and sort of do an analysis, it kind of would look like this, and then it jumps up in 20, and it hasn't come down. So, we see every day folks moving here that are parents of students that go to school here that just pulled off the road and kind of rode around and saw the beautiful architecture in the city and right here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And proximity, we've got a rail line that you can go to New Orleans or to Boston. We've got an airport that, can get us to Charlotte. Hopefully we get some more legs. But proximity wise, we can get to DC in a little over 3 hours. We can get to Virginia Beach in 4 hours. You can get down to Charlotte in 3. You can get to a lot of places in this sort of mid-Atlantic that we live in from Lynchburg. The proximity is very strategically located.
What do you see as the and I'm not talking future 50 years from now, but the next 3 to 5 years economically in this town? What's what's going to drive it? And obviously, external factors, what's going on in the country, and we know about tariffs and all these different things that could affect a lot. But just here locally, what's your prediction for what we're going to see here economically in the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more steady as you go. I think you're correct in the big booms. It's just not the personality of this neck of the woods. It's a little more steady as you go, a little more conservative.
Are there certain industries that you see driving this area?
Well, certainly the colleges and universities.
Right.
And, BWXT is a phenomenal company. We're lucky that they moved their headquarters back here under the leadership of Rex Jividen and his team. And Arriva, is headquartered here. And so, I mean, we've got some really good economic anchors. The healthcare system here employs, I think it's the second largest employer behind Liberty, or maybe it's the largest. I think they're the 1 and 2.
Right.
Employers here. So we've got some really good employers here that provide for economic stability. And gosh, I wish I could had a crystal ball, but I see up the line Lynchburg, Greater Lynchburg, Region 2000, whatever you want to call this part of the state, that it's gonna even brighter days ahead. I think that the leadership, in this area has continues to do a good job. Well, I think the business leadership here continues to do a good job of helping to attract business. And
did you just not make a comment about city council?
Oh Lord! That's one thing I learned about being a banker. I am not going to get into politics. I'm Switzerland. But I will say, as a citizen, I really hope we can get in concert in the city's leadership and keep on the good momentum that we have. And I'll just quickly say again, as a citizen, no political party affiliation, I just really root for our leadership to do the best job they can to make this city, continue to make this city as great a city as it is, and what I think it can even be greater can be in the future. And I have confidence that will happen. But I think that looking up the line, with everything that we've had, happen over the last 10 years, I see it as it's going to get better. I heard a statistic recently that surprised the heck out of me. Probably 10 years ago, let's say, what you thought was 5 years ago now is 10 years ago, and 10 years ago is now 15 or 20. It goes
fast.
Oh, Lord. But 10 years ago, roughly, the demographics for Lynchburg, most of the population was 50 years old and older. Mm-hmm. Now it's 50 years old and younger.
Really?
So the demographics have flip-flopped. So we've got more younger people here than we have people over 50. And that's roughly the breakdown.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think the growth in certainly Liberty University.
Of course.
We've got a lot of Liberty students that work with us. I mean, they make great employees.
They come in and they stay.
They come in, they stay. I think that this place offers more to that age group than it did 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of things kind of coming together. And interestingly enough, the younger generation, which I think are as it should be, will be better than my generation. I'm the tail of the baby boom generation. So I really think these younger generations, they're going to be better than us, and that's the way it should be. So I think that's one of the reasons I think the bright days ahead for Lynchburg, because we are having younger folks stay in this community. And one of the things that I find in this younger generation, and you can break it down with millennials, Z, X, Z, whatever you want to call it, is that the younger generation, they like local, and they like to support their communities and volunteer, and so that makes for good community banking for ground to plow, so to speak. So that's a real refreshing thing to see. That age group cares about the community. Like a lot of the folks in our generation, and so that I think that portends to be a bright future ahead.
On the consumer side of things, and I certainly don't Juan, I don't know that I would understand if you did, you getting into the weeds, but when you look at inflation and interest rates and the things that affect everybody in their day-to-day life,
Yeah.
I mean, people sitting there going, man, I'm making the same amount of money, but my money just doesn't go as far. And it feels like, maybe that's getting a little bit more under control. And again, maybe Lynchburg's a little bit more insulated than that. But I mean, how do you see that progressing in the next few years? Do you see, all that coming under control? I know they're talking about the Fed maybe lowering interest rates, which would help younger people. I mean, we've got a bunch of them who, want to buy houses, want to own houses, but the prices have skyrocketed, interest rates are high, and it's, unaffordable for a lot of people. Do you see that changing soon here?
Affordable housing is a problem in many places.
Yeah.
I think just the other day, like 600 single family or single rooms coming to downtown Lynchburg.
Wow.
So there's a lot of development coming that's going to provide good housing for younger people. It's without question the inflationary pressures that we've had the last several years has really caused some pain for everybody. I mean, you go to the grocery store, you can just see. I mean, you're getting, it's 25% more. I was talking to Wells Duffy at the Cavalier store. He was talking about meat prices. He was telling me that last year, he said, my meat price has almost doubled since last year. I mean, that's hard. That's hard to manage in a business.
Yeah.
So those kinds of challenges are real and they're certainly concerning. I would argue or offer that in Lynchburg you get a little bigger bang for your buck than maybe Northern Virginia or the bigger cities. So that's a plus. That might be part of an attraction. But hopefully the leadership of our country and the Fed and everyone involved in the free enterprise system, we can work through this time, and I think we will. But it's not going to come without some challenge. I do think that the tariffs, and although I was an economics major in college, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to talk about tariffs. But I do believe that the tariffs that have been enacted, we have not necessarily seen those numbers yet. It's still working its way through the system. So what's going to be interesting to see is what does GDP look like at the end of the third quarter? What does it look like at the end of the year? I think there are going to be some real telltale quarters about what our gross domestic product actually looks like with these tariffs.
So do you potentially see a little bit more pain, for people in the next, 6 months, year or 2 years?
Well, I've got a friend that lives out in Indiana, and his wife's family are farmers, and they raise, corn, maybe soybean. And with the impending tariffs, I think it was maybe China just canceled contracts. And in their case, they've got beans in the ground and corn in the field. They may just stay there and not even take it in because they can't sell it. So there are things that are already happening that because of the tariffs and the I guess you can call them trade wars. I don't know. Some of the rhetoric that's been going on where some of that stuff's happened, has really, the trucking industry has kind of suffered some with some of the stuff. So there are things that have already begun to happen.
Okay.
But I do think that possibly there's still some more pain to come.
And understanding what you said earlier, you don't have a crystal ball. So, these are just kind of, educated guesses.
And I would even argue uneducated guesses. but I hope, again, that the leadership of our country is spot on and that that we know what we're doing and that it works. I've always rooted for whoever the president of the United States is, regardless of party. That's one thing that just is so disappointing these days, how that's not the case. But I think that there's possibly some challenges ahead. But one of the things it's very psychological, the economy and consumer sentiment, consumer confidence. And gosh, if you read the headlines or hear what some of our even banking leadership has said through the years, calling for economic tsunamis and this and that and the other. I mean, good gracious, you scare the heck out of people, you know. And so it would be best if some of the leadership in our country refrains from some of the scare tactics, scaring talk, and maybe just say nothing at all, or just say we have challenges or whatever. But I think that sometimes we can shoot ourselves in the foot along those lines by sort of psyching out the American consumer, which drives our economy and frankly the world economy.
What as part of the leadership team, as the CEO of the Bank of the James, when regular people come up to you, right, whether they be a business owner or just a consumer or whatever the case might be, considering the economic times that we live in, what's the question they ask you the most? You should have given me that question last week. I just thought of it because I'm thinking like, is it interest rates?
Usually it's interest rates. It's like, what do you think interest rates going to do? And that's another one. Lesson Ron Dolan taught me years ago is, Chapman, don't ever try to guess where interest rates are going because nobody knows. And so, but that's the question I get you.
It is.
What's the Fed going to do next? What are interest rates going to do? Another question we get a lot is, y'all aren't going to sell the bank, are you? That's another question we get.
Are you?
Well, I will say this: everything's for sale at the right price. But I can tell you that we, as a company and our board of directors, while we understand wholeheartedly who we work for, and we try to make the best decisions we can every day for our shareholders and the value of their investment in our bank, but we want to be an independent bank serving the regions that we're serving. That's what our focus is on, and we've got some really good things internally going on. I think over the last 5 to 6 years, during the pandemic particularly, we kind of got a little, for lack of a better way to put it, a little fat and happy, or just things began to fall through the crack. I mean, we were operating so crazily with people at home and people that had to come in on the front lines and just hodgepodge, and we got through it. And I think some areas of our bank came through it and are stronger for it. And I think some areas of our bank has suffered for it. So we've got some challenges there. But I think generally speaking, we've got a great opportunity, and we've got a highly motivated team of employees that share in the mission and vision of our bank, and we're ready to go after it and continue on the path we're on. But I can't sit here and tell you that if some XYZ bank, we're trading today at $15.50. If they came in and said, "Hey, we'll pay you $40 a share," I mean,
it's business.
It's business.
Bottom line is you want to make money.
That's correct. Again, generally speaking, I'm speaking generally a lot today, but banking is a people business still, even though it's changing, and there's a lot of mobile applications that younger folks use and don't even come into the bank. But it's still generally a people business, and rarely do you see, unless a bank's failing, rarely do you see good, strong banks being taken out with a hostile takeover. It's usually more of two organizations coming together to be partners and thereby be stronger and have the same values and the same philosophies of community banking, et cetera. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But as far as we're concerned, for the foreseeable future, we want to be who we are today.
True or false? Bob Chapman is not super comfortable in New York City.
Well, I will say two things about that. I'm the guy that if you go to New York City, I'm the guy standing on the corner pointing up at all the tall buildings, and waving to people as they go. No. So when Scruggs and I went to New York City for investment purposes, I had not been to New York City very often. I had been maybe once or twice, and I certainly had not been enough to know my way to get around on the subway system and all that. So I was definitely a bumpkin come to town. And so he held me by the hand for the first several trips. But I've gotten to where now, man, I mean, he'd be proud of me. I can go up there and get along on my own now. But I would say initially very true, but it's becoming more and more false, I guess, as I've gotten a little more experience.
Good. Where do you like going? Vacations. Where are some of your favorite spots?
Well, I love Rockbridge County in the Shenandoah Valley. I like the Outer Banks of North Carolina. My wife and I enjoy going to Greece. We've been there a few times. So I'm kind of a homebody, so I like to stick kind of close to home.
Is there a place that you went to that it just totally either underwhelmed or overwhelmed, or exceeded your expectations, where it was not at all what you thought it would be?
So the first time I went to Poros Island, Greece, there was a friend of mine here who had been over there many times, and we were going to lunch a little bit before he was leaving to go over, and I was going to be coming over like 2 or 3 weeks later. And Glenn Marshall's who I'm talking about. And anyway, Glenn said, "Hey, look, Chapman, I can sit here today and tell you all about Poros, but you just got to go. You just got to go experience it." And I'm like, yeah, okay, I hear you. But let me tell you, when we got over there, some of the vistas on that island that overlook the Aegean Sea, and there's this where we stayed on the island. You drive mopeds around, and we went to the top of the island. And at the very top is Poseidon's temple, and this was like a 3,000 BC year old temple it's in ruins. But if you go up there and stand where that temple is and you look out over the vista, you feel like you're at the top of the earth and very close to, a supreme being. And you can understand why they put that temple to Poseidon there. Right there. So that was a breathtaking thing. But I tell you, there are a lot of breathtaking places right here in Virginia and certainly across the country. And that's kind of, I think, looking up the line in terms of some travel, there's some places in the United States I want to check out.
And I know you're still very involved. You went to VMI.
Yes.
Still very involved and proud of that. Although when you went up to Charlottesville, I heard your consultant was not a big fan of VMI.
Yeah, he's like, you went to VMI. He's like, you're dumb, It's like a reform school. Yeah, that was
a lot of cadets in this area.
Of course, he was a Virginia Tech guy, so he probably had a little bit of that hokiness in him, on that front. Yeah. But VMI is an interesting place. I'm certainly proud to have gone there, and I made a lot of good relationships when I was there, and have a lot of good relationships because of it. I will say this about VMI, that when I came to Lynchburg, and Lynchburg and Lexington have always kind of had a close association with W&L and VMI, and some of the folks going to schools over there. And so it's really not that far. They're not that far apart, save going over the Blue Ridge Mountains. But when I came to Lynchburg, the fact that I had gone to VMI gave me instant credibility in this town. And that was a really good thing.
There's a lot of VMI folks here.
Yes.
I mean, and I know you know that, but I mean, it's an unbelievable network from what I understand.
We're small, but we're tight. But that was just one thing that it was really comforting to me, that to come to a town that pretty much accepted me right off the bat because I was a VMI graduate, and that just went a long ways to helping me establish myself.
You gave up the presidency at Bank of the James a couple of years ago,
yes.
Just CEO now. Tell me a little bit about that and what might be next for you.
Okay. So looking kind of up the line and what we were, particularly with the expansion that we had undertaken and how we were operating, it seemed to me that we needed more senior representation in the field. And Mike Sauerk, who's been with us now 12 or 13 years, he deserved to be named that because he's a very strong leader and has really helped transform our company into what it is today. So he earned the title in my mind, but it's been great because we've been able to, as we kind of kid inside, divide and conquer. and it's kind of given another senior leader the ability to go out, whether it be Harrisonburg or Charlottesville, and as president of the bank, people know they're talking to the top echelon.
Right.
And you don't president CEO, you can certainly carve off one of those titles and give it away. I mean, you don't have to be both of them.
What's next for you?
What's next? Well, I've been working since I was 12 years old. I carried newspapers for many years before I worked at an egg farm and then worked construction. So I've been working all my life, and I enjoy working. So I don't see myself quitting anytime soon. But I will say that I'll be 65 in July of 27, and I will have been the CEO 25 years at that point. And 25 years is a pretty good run for that position, and it could be that at that point in time there might be some time for new blood at the helm. I hope to continue to remain on the board and be part of and be in the leadership of that, and not quit and continue to work with the company and help grow it and call on customers and build relationships. So I hope to do that for the foreseeable future. But in a couple of years, it may be time for a new person at the helm. We'll see how that all shakes out. I'm not hung up on any time frame or looking to stop what I'm doing. I'm enjoying it, but I do feel like it comes a time where new leadership is good for a company.
Whenever that time comes, however many years
Sure.
down the road it is, is there anything that's at the top of your bucket list that you're like, that's what I want to do?
I want to get one of these extended saws where I can cut high limbs and bushes around my house and my cabin over near Lexington. I do my own yard work.
You do?
I do so it's kind of probably my hobby.
Okay, because I was going to tell you, we got a guy for that. The woodsman Tommy Barber is awesome.
Oh, I'm sure. and of course, no one can do it as good as me.
Right.
But I do have to sometimes call in the cavalry with pruning and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But in terms of bucket list, I would want to continue to help make the community that I'm living in as strong as possible.
So maybe more nonprofit work. I know you guys at the bank are really involved with a lot of nonprofits everywhere you are.
Yeah.
But maybe something like that.
Something like that, yeah. or some type of volunteer, whether it be continue at VMI in a volunteer mode. The communities that I'm in. I mean, I would want to think that I still would want to add or contribute along those lines, and not necessarily get really active and be in the leadership of a group, but just really be sort of an Indian and just be a sort of foot soldier.
Just help. Yeah,
just help.
Well, you got time.
Yes, sir.
You got time.
I got time. Hope so, man.
Bob, thank you. Really appreciate the time. It was a lot of fun.
Likewise. Appreciate it, buddy.
Bob Chapman, Bank of the James.